And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On the Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. We're back in the Ref Watch, a retired referee who's been through a lot, covered many's a game, and yes, I probably have abused him, but I'm sure he's okay with it now. But it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Lee Tavinder. Lee?
I've forgiven you. I'm still not ready. The retired bit still kills me. Like, I'm not quite ready for it, but yeah.
Everybody's writing me off at the minute, to be honest. They're saying, like, what's it like being retired? And I'm like, well, sort of semi-retired, but I'm enjoying it, if I'm being honest.
No, I'm full retired. Like, no, I'm not going back. So
not
great talk. No, definitely not. But no, great to be here, John.
Well, listen, thank you. I know we've kind of organised this for a couple of weeks now, and I've had you doing a few speeches for me in different aspects of life, but it's a pleasure to have you in the hot seat, mate. I mean, I love talking about referees and everything that comes with it, and it's going to be very.
I always thought there's a referee in you when you played. Like,
you know what? A couple of people have said that.
Yeah, I could have seen it. There's a few. There's a few that always said like, but that's
maybe actually done better.
That's the next documentary. That's the next documentary. Johnny goes refereeing. Like,
Johnny tries. Can you just wee cams on?
Yeah, get you out in a park in Ballymena somewhere. And
the only thing is, you have to get me mic'd up too, so I could get people shouting
as well. So yeah.
But no, listen, thank you. It's a pleasure. But what we're going to do is we're going to dive right into things, mate. As I've touched on there, we've been in each horse company now for 13 years since I started the league. Obviously, yours spans probably an extra 10, 11, 12 on top of that. So obviously, there's a big career to cover. But how did it all get started? Obviously, you're an English lad. You've obviously moved here at some stage. So take me right back.
So I'd have played not a great level, sort of up until under 18s, under 19s sort of football, and then actually hurt my Achilles, which is part of the reason I ran. Really funny, which I'm sure would have come up at some point, so we'll get it out of the way now. And there was a specific. I didn't always run like that. I hurt my Achilles 2 or 3 times, got tendonitis in it, kept coming back, and a couple of people had said, my landlord actually said, listen, I'm running a kids side, do you fancy going refereeing? We'll pay you £10 a match, which back then was epic for an 18-year-old. So I just started for a few quid and said, and eventually, I think about 1920, I was enjoying the refereeing more than I was enjoying the playing.
Okay.
And the point I actually switched was my discipline as a player was terrible. Too much of that.
Just shouting the referees.
I always thought it was right. As you realise, for 20 odd years afterwards. So my discipline's awful. My dad used to run the team, and he used to cringe because. Yeah. So I think I hit 5 cautions really quickly, as I always did, and I didn't realise that I'd be suspended from refereeing and playing. So I got a phone call to say, like, you can't referee on Saturday because you've got 5 cautions.
Is that the way it works, even if you're playing?
Even now, I mean, over here you can't. We can sort of do both, but yeah, you're suspended from everything. So I was binned for a whole weekend. I'm like, so that
was your morning, couple of quid going as well.
Everything that was 20 quid down for the week, like so. So it was like, well, and again, they sort of said, listen, you can progress in this, and back then, like, there wasn't as many young referees as there was now, so I was quite. And I say within like 12 months of starting refereeing, I was in development groups with the likes of Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor, who now are still.
Okay.
Like, they were the guys that I was sort of like being pushed through with, and sometimes I'd look at Michael Oliver, I'd be like refereeing Champions League at Inter Milan, and I'd be at Carrick on the Saturday, and I was like,
bit of a
no place I'd rather be. Like, I mean,
Taylor's Avenues, home from home at the end of the day.
Carrick, like. So like there was like they basically put it out there. Listen, you can really progress quite quickly in this, and I was like, well, playing Sunday morning football, potentially progressing a bit further.
Yeah.
And I sort of stuck to the refereeing, and I say not one regret. I did a million things more as a referee than I would have done as a player.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes trying to get that over to young players, is difficult at 18, and like saying, listen, if you're not quite going to make, and it's hard to tell a player they're not quite going to make it, but actually saying, well, maybe
a young kid there with like high hopes and ambitions of being the next big thing is.
And I mean, there was a guy who I mentored in England, a guy Simon Bennett, who was playing, got an injury, was sort of on an orange. Should he consider playing? That guy's been to 2 World Cup finals as an assistant referee.
Class.
Just because he went, do you know what? I'll gamble on the referee. And so I think for referees, if you're 18 and you're thinking about it, there's so many opportunities. Yeah. Like, there's things I've done that.
And the thing is too, you're still involved in the game, like you're in every aspect of the game. As such, like it's like, yes, okay, you're not able to maybe score goals or tackle somebody, but I mean, you're still able to be at the games, be in front of the fans, experience everything that the players were experiencing there.
And it takes 6 months. Like, it took 6 months for me to sort of switch the mindset from going like, I'm not playing anymore. This is, but see, once you're into, and refereeing's really addictive. If you get, and like so many referees, you lose after 6-12 months, whether they have a bad experience, they go back to playing, they find something else. I think once you're over that 12-month, it does become really, it's weirdly addictive.
Well, one of the things that you kind of, just to kind of obviously put in perspective here, is obviously you've done it in England, you started off in England, but there's so many full-time positions for referees in England, as you say, and the ladder's quite easy to progress over there, because there's so many games, so many different leagues. But why would that be appealing for someone who's from Northern Ireland? Like, would it be better for that young lad to progress here? Because, I mean, there's not really as far as you can go here.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I think long term for NIFL, for the AFA, I think that's something they've probably got to think about. Because,
have to consider, yeah.
Because I said in England, when I started, there wasn't full time referees, so but now, I mean, like, I go and watch my nephew. He sort of plays for Macclesfield as sort of youth 15, 16s. Every referee he has is 15, 16, 17. Mm-hmm. Like, so many young referees, because I think there's that carrot of a full time job at the end of it, and the full time championship now, and like. Whereas over here, it's nice little.
It's a nice little bump at the end of the week or the end of the month.
But it's not something. So, and we do see, like, we get good lads who maybe qualify at 18, do a bit of youth football. They're away to university in England and stuff like that. So you lose them. And when I worked at the AFA, we lost 4 or 5 refs. So we're like, they'd be really good. Quite rightly, they're going, I'm away to England now to live my life. So I think it's a real challenge now to try and figure out a way. It's never going to be professional. We're never going to have full-time referees, I don't think.
No.
But find a way where it's maybe a part-time thing and people can actually go, well, I'm going to have to do something alongside this, but my main focus is... Because realistically over here, the aim for referees who want to progress is probably a FIFA badge, so you can start refereeing the European games. Yeah. Which I was very lucky to do, only as a 4th official, but... I mean, like, Jamie Robinson was refereeing in the Conference League last week at Mainz. Done Bundesliga side, 32,000.
Class, yeah.
Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I mean, that opportunity for somebody. Now, I'm not saying that. I mean, he's worked very hard to get there. I refereed France, Netherlands, doing France under 21s with, like, I'm looking back, 7 of the team that played in the World Cup final against Argentina, like 2 years later. Like, you're almost like, where am I? Yeah, like, and that's the selling point, but it's obviously it's a long journey to get there. So I think at some point probably need to look and say, right, if we can find a pathway to say
it needs to be more professional. And I think it's something that we spoke about just beforehand, and the Ice League's evolving into this like catastrophically big professional game now with the money and the influx of like full-time players, and the only thing that doesn't really seem to be changing or remotely changing is the idea of referees becoming a bit more professional in what they're doing.
It used to really frustrate me when I'd hear, the league's growing, and I think NIFL have done, I mean, as you said, it's evolved so much, and it continues to evolve, and you've got full-time teams. The media aspect of it is a different world from what it is, and so I agree. But it used to really frustrate me to say the league's growing, but the only thing that's not keeping pace is refereeing. It's true now. 6 years ago, I'm like, I'm not so sure. See now, I mean, and I can't emphasize enough. Only out the game for sort of 6 months, and I know it's not really changed much since I'm away. Refereeing's not even close to being like, it's not semi-professional. It's a part-time hobby for guys. Every referee is doing. A lot of the guys are going to work on a Saturday morning, finishing at 11 o'clock, rushing to the games,
or even doing younger games.
Well, they're not supposed to be doing that, but I mean,
30 or 40 quid a pop at that on 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you could be up 80, 90 quid for you.
And that, I mean, that's another issue in itself. I mean, like, there's a lot of ex-players that have started to come into the games, but a lot of them have come in because they finished playing and they go, I can go and earn 200, 250 euros a week refereeing. And some people criticise the youth leagues have really nailed it because they're like, we're going to look after referees, we're going to give them kit. They could referee on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday. They've got people on the sidelines looking after the managers. They can do 3 9-a-sides back to back where you don't have to run a hell of a lot. You can, as an 18-year-old, and if I was 18 now, and I was coming in, and the youth leagues were saying, listen, just stay and do this. All right. Because the other option is you go to one of the adult leagues on your own. There's 22 grown men chasing after you. Only play at 2 o'clock on a Saturday. No other options. On a wet, soggy pitch somewhere in Ballymena or Belfast or wherever. Or you stay and do your nice cushion. So referees aren't progressing, so they're just going, I quite like it here.
Yeah, and uncomfortable.
The pool that we're fishing in for the next senior referee is so small now because a lot of the younger ones or the ones that would have progressed in the past have gone, I quite like it here. They pay for my kids. And so, but we're refereeing has to professionalise because, and even when I look back now, you know, and we have some really, and people will quite, you know, we have some really good referees in the panel at the moment. And people will say, all referees are rubbish. And that's the one thing. It doesn't matter what referees do. They will always be rubbish. You go to Scotland and speak to them. Scottish will say their referees are the worst in the world. England, full-time professionals, training 5 times a week.
Not good.
Worst referees in the world. I'm sure it's the same in Spain and Italy, wherever. We do have some, but what they're not, they don't have a professional environment.
No.
So they're very much, I mean, how many times a month do you think referees actually meet and train as a group?
I'm going to say it's once, but that's because I've had a conversation with a referee very recently and kind of trying to pick the brains of people and understand the aspects, more so since I've started this, the actual aspects of the league and what it takes for every aspect of different playing fields.
They're meeting as we speak now, and it's the Premier League, the Championship, the PIL all together on one big group. Hours training, hour in a classroom, that's it.
Yeah.
And people say, well, why hasn't refereeing progressed? We've been doing that since I would have been in around the Premier League from about 2009 onwards. And we're probably, I would say referees are doing less now than when I started in 2009. So why would it have got better? And a lot of if a referee's going to improve, it falls down to them as a person and their personal responsibility to actually do self-analysis, the fitness side of it. There's no real obligation on them to do that outside of turn up once. Great if you do. If you don't really matter, you know. So
you kind of just have to hit your limit, don't you? Like you do your fitness test, and once you get your fitness test, that puts you into that category of, say, I do the fitness test to get me into the PIL. Then I'm done, and I can referee the PIL. And
we do it twice a year, like fitness test twice a year. And particularly as I started getting older and my ankles started to be sore and everything, realistically, I'd always give them top of my fitness, I think, from a mental point of view as well as a physical point of view. It was natural. But a lot of referees would maybe sort of go down and then a month before the test start training for it. And what's lacking is that continuous personal development that just isn't there. And I've heard, you know, Niffle, I think Jared speaks about referees quite a lot. And I do think there's something in him that maybe, if not, but, you know, Niffle, at the end of the day, the stakeholders are the Niffle clubs. So if they want to improve refereeing, I think everyone's got to get their heads together and go, right, we've not done anything different since 2007, 2008, and nothing's changed. If we are going to put something in place to professionalise it, what does it look like? And get everybody involved to decide what that looks like. Because I think people can moan about it all day long, but if you don't do anything to change it, and it's not up, a lot of people say, well, it's up to the IFA to do that. Well, it's not. You know, it's the clubs and Niffle that, at the end of the day, refereeing will tick along. It will always be there. It'll always tick along.
Well, you need it. Is the big
absolutely. It'll never go away though. So you know, and the problem with it is you'll never make money from developing referees.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not something you'll ever.
You're getting the return on your investment of someone doing that. It's not like you can sell a referee to another Saudi or.
If you wish we could have sold like that, but you know, you'll never. You know, it's not going to return. As you say, it's not going to return an investment, but. If you see a league that people aren't moaning about referees week in, week out, that's an extra reason, you know. And I think there's an identity thing at the moment as well. And like I still listen on a Saturday afternoon, and Joel's always moaning about the amount of yellow cards. That's his. And I've spoken to Joel many. I think he's another one that's really interested and really invested in refereeing, and I love talking to him about it. But I think he and the supporters have this real want to go back to the old Irish league of first one's free. We're really not going to send you off unless you really kill us.
I was always hoping for that. Never really worked. I always end up with,
like I must have given you, like me and Ray would have given you at least the first one. I give everyone one, like, yeah. but to be fair, like that. When I started refereeing, that was the mentality. Like the Irish League is rough and tumble. We actually sell it on the fact that it's physical. Mm-hmm. Foreign referees used to come on exchange, loved coming here because it was almost like they were coming back in time to
the experience what it was like 20 years ago.
Absolutely. So where it was real physical, it was real frenetic. It wasn't as technical it definitely wasn't as technical as the leagues they were in. But they
the only thing. Sorry to jump in there, but when you're talking about referees coming in, foreign referees, obviously everybody's styles are different, and when you talk about referees being in Europe, is that one of the phases where we would struggle because we can't adapt this new way of you can't really touch anyone, and our referees are so physically oriented.
And this is exactly the point I was like, and I've spoken to managers about this, and I think they totally recognise it. When our club's going to Europe, look at the amount of red cards they got.
Yeah,
Dungannon, I think, had 2, at least 2. Lawn had 3, I think.
Yeah, I can remember.
And that's because, and I watched one of the Dungannon game that they played, and the tackle went in. I was like, that's a red card.
Yeah.
In the Irish League, maybe he might have got away. I think it was a red. Anyway.
Slap the wrist.
But the players are going out and going, and I've seen tackles go in where they're going, that's a yellow, like I'll take the yellow, and the referee gets the red card out, and they're like, that's because he's applying UEFA standards.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I think what's happened this year is referees are now trying to apply the UEFA standards, and everyone's going, where are all these yellow cards coming from?
Yeah.
But I think what the whole league, and its managers, officials, even supporters have to go, what do you want? If you want the rough and tumble, fine.
Yeah.
I think referees, actually, I think as a referee, I would prefer to do that. I prefer to manage players. I prefer to keep players on. But if you want if you want your clubs to do well in Europe and to progress, you probably need to go with a standard that the vast majority of every other leagues do. The yellow card's a yellow card. And if our clubs are going to compete in Europe and get a challenge in Europe, where there's VAR, like from very early rounds now as well, so you can't get away with a cheeky dig at the back post because
it's caught. And
there's a camera on you.
And that person's not standing up, he's dropping.
Oh, they're yeah.
That's where your killer is.
Centre off from Lawn looks, and he falls on the floor, and I really think our clubs have got to really, and I think they should be the ones setting the identity. At the moment, I think our referees are caught between it a bit, and then they'll be accused of being inconsistent, which is the worst thing. Mm-hmm. I'm always at ease that if a referee goes and sends a player off in week 1 at Dungannon, and then the next week at Dungannon the same thing happens, and that's the style the referees are going for.
Yeah.
What I think clubs can't accept, and I would struggle to accept, is when the next week the referee goes, well, actually, I'll just go with the yellow there.
Yeah.
Because that kills referees' credibility. So I think the referees, the clubs have got to say, right, what style do we want here? Because the league's evolving, so you probably have to go down the road of, if you're going to do well in Europe.
At least then it gives you an argument. At least then it gives you the opportunity to say, we've done this and we've tried to catch up, and people then can't complain because we're now putting ourselves and putting money and investing in the people to make it more professional, if that makes sense. Then at least there's something there to say, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that our referees are as good as they can be.
And there was a tackle on, I think it was Bangor, whoever Bangor were playing on Friday night. It was awful, it was a clearer red card as you'll ever see. It was late on. Gavin Boyce was the referee. Boyce is one of the older school. He's one of the more experienced old, obviously, when I say experienced, but a clear red card. He sends the player off. See the amount of comments underneath around. I would say 90% was, that's never a red card. It's not even a UEFA one. It's it's just a red card every day of the week. So supporters will always, it's easy.
Yes, they don't want the players to be sent off either.
But again, getting that understanding, and we were briefly talking about it beforehand, and having that monthly roundup and saying, listen, this here, whatever you think of it, that 100 times out of 100 is going to be a red card.
I just think,
get used to it
100%.
Because it's not going to change. And our referees are being told, if a player kicks a player with force and the ball isn't in playing distance, that is a red card. And at no point in the next 10 years is that going to change. So you can moan about it all you want. That's fine.
Yeah.
But we're telling you now that will be a red card.
Yeah, well, I do think that at least then there's accountability and people can stand up and say, okay, I get it. The other side of things that we spoke about beforehand was, if I'm going to put myself out there and be completely honest, I don't think that half of the people who are watching the games understand the laws of the game. And I'm going to be completely honest, because I played right up till last year. I didn't.
Oh, and
So, do you know what I mean? Like, and that was coming from I was 18. Like, you don't take notice in it. You just play football and you turn up as a player. And now some players are more intelligent than others and understand and research that and are no problem. But if players don't understand it, I guarantee you that fans don't. And some of them maybe do, 100% that they will. But majority of people don't.
But I used to do the coaching courses, like the A license, B license, and the first question would be like, how, particularly the youth coaches, how much do you do on the laws of the game with your players?
No.
The answer's always 0.
Yeah.
I was like, would it not be worth at the start of every season doing an hour? Because you'd say, and you know, there's players that did understand it, and that was just because they took their own personal interest.
Mm-hmm.
From a really cynical point of view, see the player that understands the laws of the game can probably get round things.
Yeah.
Whether that's by talking to the referee about it, being smart about it, avoiding a caution here and there. And those players did. And to be fair, the coaches usually were like, well, that's probably a good point. Like, handball, I'm fairly sure 50% of the referees don't understand. Handball is just, it's got away from us. Like,
it's so red tape.
Like, you watch Match of the Day.
They don't understand. Actually, the closest one I've seen there was the Rangers and Celtic one.
Yes.
I think your boy gets pushed, the Rangers player pushes him, the Celtic guy dives. I don't know his name, I'm just seeing a clip of it. Both arms are sort of in, and it hits his arm. And I'm like, is that by the law of the book? It hit his arm regardless, but then people are saying his arm's tucked, it's not out. And I'm like, but then again, the law still states that if it hits your arm, it's a penalty, so...
There was times towards the end where I was giving handballs that I was almost feeling guilty about giving, because I'm like, I know in the law this is what a handball is.
Yeah.
But if I was playing and that got given against me, I'd be fuming.
Yeah.
So it's and I think it's become so grey and ambiguous now that you can give anything and probably get supported by the assessor who will say, well, you got it right because technically this is. Mm-hmm. In the media, everyone's going to be like, that's never a handball in a million years.
But the law states it.
And we just move on to the next week. And so I do think long term, if there's one law that's the handball, I don't know how you fix it.
Well, I think that, as you say, it's probably gotten too far away, but is it going to be one of those things that next year, because it has changed near enough every year for the last 3 or 4 years.
And referees are confused now. Yeah. Absolutely no doubt. I mean, referees at the top level are confused. See the poor guys down there, who knows?
And they're being coached full time to understand, and
So it's just so grey and ambiguous now that I think we probably have. It's got a long way away because and we talk about consistency again, and 1 week, particularly with VAR, and VAR's changed refereeing the countries that have got it so much, because there's things that are being given that would never even been seen, and now they're having to analyse it. It's.
Here's a weird question for you, right? And I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks. And I don't know why, but it is.
We go anyway.
I've been burning, right? Is VAR like Google Maps? Now, hear me out when I say Google Maps. People were very good at navigating before Google Maps happened because they had to retain muscle memory, figure out street names and X, Y, and Z, and then they end up getting themselves there. VAR has now taken away the aspect that regardless they can go watch a screen. Does that comprehend like positioning on a pitch? Do they need to really worry about being in a certain line to view the offside rule because they know that, oh, I'm going to get a red line across this in 10 minutes and it's going to tell me here? No. Or does that just sound stupid? No, it might just sound stupid, but
it sounds like a university assignment.
I don't want to try and sound smarter than I actually am because they all know that I'm not there.
You're achieving that. You're no.
I've really thought about this.
I think. I think. Is it making referees lazy?
Yes, probably. Well, yeah.
Is a layman's term, which is weird.
Probably a very quicker. Yeah. See, you did get it. You knew it was a long.
I really had to work with it though. we might need to pause the cameras and go for a sleep for a moment. But
heads frizzled.
I think, see, in terms of VAR, I think they massively underestimate the psychological effects it would have on a referee, because you've got referees that refereeing for 20 years where their decision is final. Then all of a sudden, not overnight, there's a lot of training to go into it. It was like, well, actually, it isn't final. We're going to check every decision that you did. That's a massive, uncomfortable place to put referees in. And what it's done, and I think the analogy that you're using there is referees now they're used to it, have relaxed and gone, if I get it wrong, I've got a second chance here.
Yeah.
And referees in general who use it love it because it takes a massive amount. So see if they... And for me, I don't like VAR. Like, as a football supporter, I don't like it. As a referee, I'd absolutely want it. And I think the discussion about will VAR ever come to the Irish League is one that's dead, because I mean, it's the financial cost behind it. Company I work for do a bit on the sort of SAOT side of it, the automated offsides, and even that, I mean, the cost that goes into that is incredible.
Never mind that, trying to get, well, we'll talk about it, but the amount of referees that would then need to be trained.
There's a million different ways we could spend that money that would be more beneficial than VAR. But on the Premier League, like, the guys they know they got a second bite. For me, VAR should have been about getting rid of the howlers. So the Thierry Henry handball and things like that, the obvious. It's now being used to every minute, to, like, Sean Dyche was on this weekend saying, they should have looked at the corner that led to the... I just stopped.
Yeah, she could go back.
So shall we go back to the throw-in that led to the ball over the... Like, that's not the foot. I mean, for my sins, I'm a Stoke fan, and part of me quite likes the fact they're in the Championship, because...
Yeah, you don't really have it. But one of the things that got me, I don't watch much football since I've came out of it, I'm going to be completely honest, but I watched the Liverpool game the other night because my brother was over, and he's a ridiculously big Liverpool fan, type of guy, would shout at TV, but quite involved. But he loves it. And what happened was the ball was played and TK scored the header the other night. Now, he's a good body, offside.
Yeah.
And it still gets to the stage where it went to VAR. Like, how does he go, I'm in line with this, there's your flag, you're off, put the ball down, play. And you're like, that's clear as day. Like, you could see when the ball was delivered, even watching TV, that he's offside.
I think referees, particularly in England, they're so scared, though. Because, I mean, you remember the Liverpool again, the Luis Diaz one, where they didn't check it properly.
Yeah.
And actually turned out, and if you listen to the audio, it's the point where the referee goes, oh, shit. And, like, you hear the guy's life drop out of it. And probably other stuff drop out of him as well at that point, because, like... And I sort of do know that, like, he's such a nice guy as well, but, like, his life just flashed before him because he's realised that he's got it wrong. And I think the effect that has on the other officials is like, we're gonna play this 100% safe. Now the impact on that is for the supporter and for the person watching the TV, and particularly people in the ground who've got to sit there and wait for. So I mean, I watched that game, and, like, I could have told you he was offside from just
see it.
He's offside, but I totally empathise with the referee in that box somewhere in Stockley Park who's going, well, I need to
make sure here,
tick every box and wait for the image to come up and all of that comes with it. So it's changed the game massively. And, like, I mean, we were talking there about people wanting the old Irish League. Can you imagine VAR? Can you imagine the reaction to that? I think it would. I honestly think it would kill the league.
Yeah. No, it would 100%.
I mean, I think back to when I was referee, like me and Krangle having a chat, trying to work out whether something was, you know, I mean, like, Krangle sat in a transit van outside Taylor's out. We'll always be, like, you know, trying to, like, whenever anyone, there was a 12-month period where everyone was like, oh, Irish League for these VAR. No, it really doesn't.
Definitely doesn't.
And I generally think 99% of people, if we come around to that way of thinking, is like, it doesn't need VAR.
Well, one of the things that really interests me about referees is I did spend quite a bit of time injured last year before I ended up doing my knee, and I took visuals of how referees and fourth officials kind of work together. And I'm going to be completely honest here again and say they don't. And they don't. And I'm not trying to be bad here, but it feels like fourth officials don't want to make a call on the referees. And I think it's more so because of the amount of abuse that they receive. And I do understand that managers and stuff in the Irish League are quite vocal in terms of abusing and shouting and screaming that should have been this, and no problem. And there's no way and hope that I would ever want to be a lino after watching for maybe 2 months, because if they do make a mistake, they're getting crucified. But it just feels like, I'm like, surely referees told him there, and he's like, nope, like, don't bring it to me, which then puts more pressure on the referee.
And I mean, teamwork, when we would meet up, teamwork would always be the topic of conversation, and it's something that could always be improved. And I think, has it improved from it slightly? Okay. But only because we got more used to the comms and things like that. And even like the communication systems, all of a sudden having this voice in your ear is really difficult.
Okay.
The role of, I mean, like fourth official, like, I mean, can you imagine like signing up to be a fourth official? Like, it's
honestly, I've said this before. I think it's genuinely the worst. I actually think that anytime I've seen a few people standing there with the board, and they're going between dugout to dugout, I actually think that that's worse than the lineup, because you're just getting barked at for 90 minutes.
And you've got the technique with the board. You get taught how to. Yeah,
they get taught. Oh, right. Yeah. Shakira hips and all.
Oh, absolutely. You have to do. Oh, it's ridiculous.
Big Tony there. With...
Oh, Tony Clark's got the. Don't worry about that. Fourth official, like, you're powerless as well, because you're taking the crap for somebody else's decisions.
100%.
But I mean, again, it's got. I mean, talk about the abuse. It's got a lot better, and like, I mean, I'm like, there was some difficult, and you have to think a lot of these fourth officials are really inexperienced. So you could have a fourth official that's just been promoted to the championship, and the issue with that comes: they've got a really experienced referee in the middle. Are they going to turn around and say, Tim Marshall, Jamie Robinson, Jamie refereeing, and
yeah,
I think you got that wrong, Jamie. It takes a set for them to do that, so I think that's an issue. The assistants, we've got such a small league. The assistants could be in the Premier League 2 years after starting refereeing. So 2 years ago, they were just taking the course, and then 2-3 years later, because in England, you've got so many levels that you have to go through and gain that experience. Realistically, you start the PAL here, a few months there, doing well, up to the championship, which is a difficult step. Going to Dundela and Welders, and 6 months into your referee's career, and like it's difficult.
It's a competitive game, yeah.
2.5 years later, like it's really, really difficult. And for a fourth official, I mean, you look at the manager, like every manager has to be dealt differently as well. Like thinking like Stephen Baxter, fantastic relationship I had with Stephen, but you wouldn't go into his technical area. You wait for him to come to you. You know, he was just somebody that if he wanted to speak to you, he'd come along, he'd speak to you, he'd have a really rational conversation about it and go. You don't really go into him. There's others where you better actually engage in a conversation, or in Kearney was brilliant, or when you could just distract with that by just mentioning something else, and he'd then be talking about it for the next 20 minutes, and he'd forget what he was moaning about in the first place. He'd be coming over, he'd be like, that's a penalty, there's a certain penalty. We were talking about that other thing, like you just distract him. But those referees don't know how to deal. Like you've got David Healy. I mean, me and David sort of started at the same. He would have been Linfield when I started. And like for the first 12 months, I worked with him for a bit, so I did know him. He really struggled with that player, and he'd say himself, player to manager transition. And I was sort of this new, and like just butt heads on it. But I think I've seen him like really, like he's one of the ones now who will really come and really wants to learn about refereeing and really wants to do that. But that's so complex, managing those relationships. So I think a lot of the fourth officials are more trying to work out how to deal with these two managers than doing what the role probably should be and keeping their eyes on the field of play. So, yeah, team. But again, it all comes back to that professionalism and how you improve, because these guys should be working on this week in, week out.
And again, like when you do consider fourth officials and you're sitting in a dugout or you're standing in a dugout and you see something happening over in the far corner and you're sitting going, that's our ball. It's a long way to see the ball and say that's ours. So
realistically, the fourth official are only going to be calling with the stuff in front of him.
Yeah.
But that's really, so you've got a manager.
But a manager's barking saying that's our ball, and the other manager's going, tell him to fuck up, there's no chance. He doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. And then vice versa. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's noise. Just it is. Continuous.
And so I came for like fourth official. There was a point where I hated getting them. Like towards the end, I used to quite like them, because I wasn't sore the next day because I could just stand there. But you got to know them. Like there's some of the managers were like
yeah.
And once they got to know you, it was fine. Like I mean, like if I go to Portadown, I'd end up sitting next to Cliffy Adams in the dugout, like, and because it was.
Niall's just there having a
Oh, Niall was one of the, like, he'd just come and hug you at some point, like he'd shout at you, he'd rip you to bits, and then he'd come over and give you a hug, like, and once you built that relationship, it was great. But for a new guy coming in,
you had a kind of.
I remember when I didn't know any. I remember once it was Distillery versus Glenavon, and Tim McCann, I think, was at Distillery at that point, and Gary was at, and like they just argued with each other. They didn't really bother about me. I just stood in the middle of it, and I was like, oh, yeah, who are these two? And obviously, 12, 15 years later, you know the two, and you deal with it much differently. But I was like, what have I landed in the middle of here? But no, and people get frustrated at liners that all they do is stand there and flag, and they are doing more. Like, we've got 3 or 4 really, really good assistants. Like, really, really good. It's, again, trying to bring them in and develop them more, because a lot of them are really new, they're quiet, and it frustrates me a little bit. They were so quiet as a referee, like, and I think that's a generational thing. Like,
people are a bit more reserved.
In my changing room, I love a bit of crack in the change room, and it's one thing I miss. And I remember I was at LAN one day and I looked up and all 3 of them were just on the phones, and I'm like, oh, game's gone. I'm getting old. I'm really getting old.
Time for me to retire.
It absolutely was. And these 3 lads haven't said a word for about 5 minutes. I'm like, this wasn't really what I said.
Let's go warm up here then. You're like, yeah.
I was like, shall we? Yeah. And like, so it definitely has changed generationally, like. But I mean, like, I was rubbish as a liner. I was terrible.
Right.
In England, I would have run the line and got to a decent enough level running the line, but that was on the back of me doing quite well as a referee. I was a couple of times.
So do you have to swap it out? Do you have to do so many games?
Not now. And then... Now it's very much a specialism. Back then, you'd sort of swap it out. Now, you're really choosing an early time whether you're going to be a liner. A liner's a weird, like. It's a strange... It's okay. Listen,
takes you to be a certain type of character. Like
very much so, like. Okay. And there are some really good ones, like, I mean, like... said a couple that would go out with Jamie, like, are doing really well. There's like Andy Nether, he's the one that looks like Chesney Hawkes. Remember him? Yeah. I had to throw them before, but like, they are really good, but it takes a totally different. So like, from a referee, you're involved all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, you're talking, you're communicating. Assistant's all about concentration, and like, you look in the Premier League, I'm amazed how many decisions assistants get right, because you've got that crossover, and like, when I was on the line, I was really guessing at what.
Yeah.
Is the officer, like, they can move that quickly. It's a real skill in itself. But again, if you're going to be a liner, usually linos go there because they haven't done that well refereeing and they want to try something different.
Yeah.
There's no time for them to develop, and that's where we need.
It's a very singular job, isn't it? Like, you have to be kind of very sort of centered in terms of how you focus and
and like I'm
not going to say like a bit autistic here, but like, I mean,
I think you do,
like, if you're kind of focused on the ball and then you're focused on your line, or do you know what I mean? So you're constantly going boom boom back and forth. Back, like, I couldn't do that. I think
refereeing's really grey.
Yeah,
lining's black and white, and I think that's the difference. That and I like when I stopped running the line, I was delighted, like, because standing at Ballymena, freezing cold on the far side.
Yeah, I get you.
It wasn't for me. I wanted to be involved for 90 minutes. Like, that's just the ego in me, maybe. Like, but no, lining was definitely not for me.
We've went off on a massive tangent. To be honest, it could just keep going, but I kind of need to rein it back in, because one of the big things that we talked about there was going like full time, and England obviously has the opportunities now that we won't ever have, as we've just touched on. But what was it that made you come? Obviously, maybe family orientated, or the missus is from here, but the opportunity of you scaling yourself and becoming a massive referee and maybe getting the Premiership was quite high at that stage. If you look back, do you ever think and going, if I had stuck it out in England, I could have been with the rest of the lads who were at my level at that stage?
I try not to. I think early on, it was a matter that I came over because I said my wife at the time was from here, and she put all my stuff on a boat, and I had to follow it, really. So stuff's floating under there. So it's just and we had first daughter, and it made sense for every reason apart from refereeing. So I mean, that was the real. And it wasn't enough on its own to keep me in England, and so I never regret moving over here, and for every reason. I think occasionally you'd look and go, but again, there's so much stuff that can happen. I had injuries. Started running funny, and I don't think the Premier League would have liked that particularly. And you just, you just don't know what would have happened. So, like,
they may have got you a good physio. You might have been able to sort that.
Possibly, so, I think they would like maybe just stretch me out or something, just hang me there for 2 weeks and see if it'll stretch my hips out. But so no, I tried not to, and I still keep in touch with some of the ones from England, like, and. I don't think you can live your life by looking back and going. I think you'd torture yourself doing that. So, but yeah, occasionally you'd see guys that you had come through with at World Cup finals, and you'd go,
"That could have been me." But sure, that could have been anybody.
Absolutely.
If I'd have been decent in football, it could have been me.
Exactly. So there's a million things that could have happened from 2007 onwards. So no, I'm always I try and be positive and look back and go, well, I did all right.
Yeah.
Funny, like one of my last games in England, I think the second last game was a FA Youth Cup, because they knew I was going, so I think it was a bit of a reward, thank you, as FA Youth Cup game at Anfield.
Right, okay.
So it was a quarter-final of FA Youth Cup.
Nice.
And then my first game over here was Kernan playing Fields and Portadown. And I'm not going to lie, I was like, this is bleak.
Yeah.
And I walked out.
From Anfield, they're like an open field.
Well, it was
pretty much,
and it was like, it wasn't like the main pitch at Kurt, it was pitch 73. And I walked all the way up there. One of the teams was there with 7. The other away team weren't even there. Away team turned up at 2 for a 2:15 kickoff. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not sure this is for me. I'm not sure this is going to work out.
I'm going back.
You know, I remember touching that sign on the way out of Anfield, and I probably just should have called it a day.
You must have birdie touched it as well, to be honest.
The assistant lifted me up to get it. Just like, you know, it's a nice moment. That was my last picture.
Something like the Titanic.
Yeah, like just on some big referee's shoulders, like. But no, I'm so glad that I didn't, because I did when I came over. I'd made. To be fair, like Alan Snoddy was brilliant.
Fantastic fella.
What I like.
He just reminds me of the guy, Inspector Clouseau.
I can see that.
He's got the mustache, and he's always
it's a strong mustache.
It's very strong.
It's one of the strongest. But like, I mean, like, we're probably gonna have a tangent here. But like Alan, you look like Alan refereed in the World Cup. That's just it. Just seems like for one of our referees to even get near a World Cup qualifier now. And it was such a different time back then. But no, Alan was brilliant, and was brilliant from the moment I got here to the moment I finished refereeing. Like, was always and. We talk about developing refereeing. Alan, like, football, football's funny. Football's cliquey. There's so much politics in football. See, with refereeing, you can times it by 10.
Yeah.
And
you always wonder that, though, because it's such a small group.
And it is, but they seem to want to really keep it. And the likes of, I mean, Alan works all over the world. I think he's like...
Yeah, he's away. I was talking to him recently, actually. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not here. I'm away in such and such for a week. I go a month somewhere to train people, and I'm like
he goes all over the world, but he basically does hardly anything here.
Yeah,
because of the egos and if we're going to develop everybody, and I mean everybody that's interested in developing referees needs to get together.
Yeah,
because for 10 years I've watched, and it's just people don't like that. There's egos and personal battles, and that's why refereeing is not progressing over here, because there's too many personal battles from top to bottom that you need to pull everybody together and say, right.
Or just a wipe and clean and start again.
And that's, and again, whether that's under Niffle, whether that's, I honestly think you've got to draw the line in the sand at some point to say, right, we're starting again. If people want to be involved,
yeah, this is what we're doing.
And
what was the process of, they brought in, I'm going to say Clattenburg, but I don't think it was Clattenburg, but they brought someone.
Clattenburg's too busy doing gladiators.
Yeah, they've brought someone.
I tried gladiators. I thought that might be my next career, but apparently not. Apparently that's not for me.
You're the wolf trying to talk it out.
Jeez.
They brought someone in recently, yes, to oversee referees, and obviously it didn't last that long because he left, but. Was that on the process of him? He was supposed to come in? He was supposed to sort of get everybody together, galvanise all the referees, and this is what we're going to do from now on. But
I think that was Mike's. I mean, Mike, credentials wise, Mike's top of the game. Like he ran the PGMOL. He developed that as an organisation. And again, PGMOL, very much what we're talking about, was sort of a line in the sand. Right, we're going to do our own thing. Difference being they have a multi-million-pound budget. And
yeah.
So Mike came in, and I think the first few months of Mike coming in, was a bit of a shot in the arm to say exactly what you just said. Right, he's gonna
have
change things. He's gonna have an impact, and then it did just say pretty much what you said. It's I don't want to put words in Mike's mouth. I like, even though I probably had one conversation with Mike while he was here, and that was really for him to tell me that I was done. He said,
no better man to do that.
And he turned around and he was like, "Well, you're not going to referee the Irish Cup final." I laughed. I was like, "All right,
fair enough."
I'll give it a count then, shall I? It wasn't the most inspirational meeting that I had, but I mean, at least he was honest. But I imagine, I don't want to put words in his mouth, I imagine he found it much more difficult than moving from Premier League to here. It's a different world, like. And to be fair, Mike brought in some new things that he'd obviously experienced, but as refereeing improved in the last 3 years, I fear it's gone backwards, because we've tried to implement some of the things that Mike brought and they just didn't stick. And like, he brought in like a system to analyse, but made it optional, so a lot of boys just went
not the
So, and listen, I think Mike still is working for it, but he's not head of refereeing now. And listen, as I say, credentials wise, he's superb, and to be fair, like, one of the things he did, he between him and Andy, they let me finish the way I wanted to finish, and I'll always be really, really grateful for that. I think if you speak to referees in general, they're probably not disappointed in what he did, but just that things didn't change. But I'm not so sure that's Mike's. I think that's just the environment. Again, coming back to that environment, the professional environment, I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, he's used to people being at a level.
He's come from a professional, full-time, 100-mile-an-hour environment to...
He's probably trying to adapt there, thinking I'm not used to dealing with people who work 9 to 5s, and 100%. Then they're going to have to go and do all this extra work.
And the model of Germany or France it's never going to work here. But what we've got to find is a model that works.
Yeah,
encourages it, and just encourages that referees. I still think a lot of referees, and I include myself in this, were in the mindset that this is a bit of a hobby.
Yeah,
we love it.
Well, until you make it a salaried job, or like somebody's taking this as a part-time role, and kids are going to grow up and having the potential of it being a full-time.
I don't think it's even money. I really think it's I think if they went, they'd probably get the same money as it was. I think it's just having that. This is what we expect you to do, and see if you do it, you'll be rewarded. I think the big issue at the moment is a referee could be bang on the game, training 4 days a week, doing everything, and they'll get treated the same as the ref. That's just like,
yeah.
I'll train every now and again. I might analyse my performance. I'll just do a bit. There's no
structure. Really.
There's no reward for the ones who are excelling, and not punishment. But
in the beginning, they can only get to a certain level here. It's not like you can go, okay, you're going to leapfrog him now because you've done this. It's like you're both at the top.
Because there's some really, really good referees there. Jamie is doing really well. Ben McMaster's come in. Great attitude. I sort of started development when I worked at the IFA with Ben, who was a young referee who had a bad experience in a South Belfast game and was thinking of quitting. Probably 8 years later now, he's doing really well in Europe, and he's a good example. Tony Clark, we said about Tony, a real natural referee. Ian McNabb, when he remembers he is a referee, is a great referee. Sometimes he forgets. Like Ian, this time, you'd ring Ian, and it was like, I'll see you on Saturday. He's like, what's happening Saturday? I was like, there's a game on. We did a game once. It was Glentoran. It was like one of these weird Sky games. They just shoehorn a Sky game in at 11:30 on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It was one of them. Ian could knock his head around what time kickoff it was, and I was like, Ian, you need to be there for why 10:30? I said, because it's 11:30 kickoff. I don't think that's right. I was like, tell Sky.
Yeah.
He wanted it about 11:10, 20 minutes before kickoff. I'm like, he said, I'm still not convinced this is the right time to get here. I'm like,
quick warm up, done.
Get
on.
And that's the sort of thing that we probably should be for.
But it's the same as players. If players turn up late, they get fined. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not saying you have to referees turn up late, they should be fined or whatever. Obviously, that's different. But I mean, if there's certain sanctions in place,
it is. It's changing that. Portadown again. Portadown fans really hated me for a good while.
Wouldn't know why.
No idea. Well, there was. I know exactly why. There was a penalty. There was Portadown. Some Portadown fans still haven't forgiven for this. It was Portadown when they were in the Championship at Glentoran. It's Johnny Fraser.
Okay.
Portadown 1-0 up, 90th minute. Johnny goes into the box. Ball had come on the pitch. I'd been distracted by a ball coming on the pitch, and I was like, it was one of the Portadown players who threw it on to try and delay it. And I was like, well, we'll just play on, but completely out of position, as I tended to be anyway, but even more so out of position than usual. Johnny, if I'm going to be kind to him, initiated the contact.
Okay. I tried.
Uncanny dive. There is, but from my angle, looked a stonewall penalty.
Yeah.
Get it, scored. Portwood, Glenn. Never forgive me. And the one thing I remember, there was a guy, Gary McCoo, who was very involved with Portadown. I got a message 2:00 in the morning from him, picture of a betting slip. He had Portadown to win 1-0, which is what it was. Lee Bonnis to score, who'd scored. Right. And I'd wrecked his bet. And they see this message, 2:30 in the morning, obviously a few beers in him, and I was like, and he wasn't happy. Like, so I thought, you know what? I feel a bit for that. So I replied to him. And he was like, I'd never expect you to reply. Thanks so much. And see, from there, we chatted about football, and it was great, but no, Ports fans didn't. But see, there was a turning point at some point. I'd walk to Portadown, and you'd have supporters coming over and chatting, and that was like, that's what I miss about it, like that real interaction. But from a professionalism point of view, what you're talking, like, there'd be times where me and our assistants would be sat in Big Jason, the kitman's hut, until about 7:10, drinking coffee and eating his Rocky Roads and things like that, and all the Portadown players that had been left out would be in there, and like players would not do that.
No.
And like I was as guilty as anyone. Like, we need to at least get to the professionalism that the players have got to, and adapt and be like, this isn't a hobby anymore. This is proper.
I do get where you're coming from in terms of that, and part of me does want to agree, but the other side of being a human being and being in football would love the fact that I was then in the company with referees, because
you see, for us it was brilliant. Players loved it.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that they would love it, and the camaraderie and building rapport with people. And I think I tried to for the last sort of year or two of my career, and trying to get to know people, especially referees, because you don't, and you always feel like you're against them and they're against you and you're against the other team, and it's just a constant fight. Whereas I would love the fact that, like, you get to actually go and have a bit of crack and a bit of
and there was a few of us that really over the last couple of years, Mark, really tried to do, like, we'd make sure we went in for a beer after or a drink afterwards, like, and people loved it. Like,
even if you get beat, you don't care.
Anytime like Glenavon, you go back in and they're like, it's great, officials don't come in anymore, and it's like, well, I partly understand, because sometimes you go out in the car park and there's a lot of boys, but like,
the more you do that,
broke that barrier. Yeah. Barry Gray, I remember at Warren Point was, and I again, another place I used to love going. Kathy I'd consume about 8,000 calories, because she used to bring food into us at half.
The sandwiches.
She'd bring everything. Like, I remember at half time when she came in with, like, apple pie. Again, professionalism point of view, apple pie and cream. And then my aligner was he said, when are we going to eat this? He turned around, I've just got cream around my face. I got rid of the thing, like. But Barry used to say, the problem with refereeing is, you'd be on the touchline, you'd have a go at the ref. After the game, you'd come over, you'd go, you're shite. Next time I'd see him was when the game's kicking off.
Yeah.
You never broke that. And, like, he says, what officials and refs need to do is find that arena where you can actually come in, talk about what's happened, shake hands, and move on. And
have a beer and have, because it does quickly move on. It never lingers, especially as a players' lounge. No, because there's a mixture of both teams. So one team's lost or drew. People are either happy, but there's somebody seen their mate who plays for another team. Stand talking anyway. There's groups of people and referees come in. I've never been back in.
I've never been after a game where a word has been said, ever.
Yeah,
and I've always been welcome. Every club. I mean, and there wasn't many. Probably the only one, like Linfield, because they didn't really have anywhere that they went, was the only one you sort of couldn't. Every other club would just make a point of showing a face.
Yeah,
and it was so appreciated.
100%.
I spent more time in Jason Hall's kit room eating Rocky Roads than I did at home.
Good biscuit, to be fair.
A great biscuit.
Good bit. And a chunky bit of chocolate at the top too.
Once we started coming in, he then started up in his biscuit game as well. Like,
oh, right, okay. He had standards then. He was like, I've got these.
Like, for the officials and Dougie Wilson, it was always dropped. Like, he'd always been there. The 6 Rocky Road down. Like, but I know what you're saying, and I think there's a fine line between finding the avenue to be more human and then professionalising that bit that brings us up to where the players are, and it's tricky. Like, it's a tricky balance, but
yeah, it is. Oh, I agree, 100%. But I think once they do get that, it'll be a better place for everybody to be working in.
Yeah.
In terms of you being in the Premiership and getting to the Premiership from your time moving across, did you find the transition from being a referee in England to being a referee in Northern Ireland different? And how long did it take you to become a Premiership referee after you kind of got started?
So, I mean, it's a different world mindset-wise, because, I mean, you and I was going to say I came back in it.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for very long. Going back to Alan. Alan came and assessed me in Dungannon Park on a Tuesday night. And you could see the moustache going from a mile off. I was like, oh no. Right. And I refereed, I think I had about 9 cautions, because the players were, what are you doing? We never get cautions in our games, like Division 3 in Middlesbrough or something like that. And they were like, why is Alan Snoddy stood over there? I was like, don't worry about it. Just go with it.
Yeah.
But, so I moved up to the Championship, probably about 6 months or something like that. But then, job-wise, career-wise, probably didn't put as much into it until about sort of 2 or 3 years later. I grew to really love football over here really quickly. It was very different, but it had that, I think it still does to a degree, that real personal side of it. Like in England, you wouldn't know the players. Like you'd be, even like I would have been around the Northern Premier League and things like that, which was it was a good proper old-fashioned football, but you'd see teams once, twice. Whereas in here, particularly when you got to the Premier League, you were seeing people twice a month, and you built those. So that's what I really love, that you built those relationships. You knew the players more. And again, I was, particularly when I started working at IFA, I know all of the players anyway. I worked with half of them, and that made it sort of, as much as they don't go here, in fact, they're probably harder on you in a way, you've got that personal relationship. So that's what I really, really loved about it. So it didn't take as long as I thought it would to adapt. And actually, I remember I went back working in England for 4 weeks and registered over there just to keep myself fit. Really didn't enjoy the football over there, because I was going to places I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Football was like, probably a similar standard to it was what I was refereeing, but I was like, this feels a bit dead, to be honest, because I really liked the relationship with the players, was what I had the enjoyment like, and it led to something. I remember when I worked at the IFA, I had my Christmas do. It's like 17th of December, and I didn't ask for it, but it just so happened I was refereeing at Windsor.
Okay.
Perfect. The Christmas do was at Windsor. Perfect.
Short trip.
What could go wrong? And I'm thinking, right, so played the game, and fine, Linfield were 1-0 up, 5 minutes to go, and Andy Waterworth was playing, and what a guy! I mean, what
fantastic.
One of my favourite people. Yeah. As much as
there's nobody that dislikes Andy. Like,
I always think, I think there's certain people in football, if somebody says I don't like that person, they've got the problem. We're used to say that. Absolutely. And there's the odd bit in Waterworth, what like, if you don't like him, a terrible commentator, but apart from that, what a guy. Actually, when I left the IFA, he did like this little mock video where he was going around and saying, do you want to say goodbye to Lee Tavinder? And they're all like, we don't know who he is. Like that's. But I for so many reasons. But he was playing. It's 1-0, and he'd actually said before the game, he was like, nothing stupid here. He said, we've got a Christmas do. We're going on the Christmas do. Don't upset anybody. Just get through this game. We'll get a beer. 5 minutes to go. Penalty, Ballymena. Handball. Oh. And it was like, we talked about handball earlier. In the current one, it was stonewall. Back then, it was a penalty. Like, there was nothing.
Okay.
And all I could hear in the background was, Tav, you've ruined it. He said, listen, I said, nothing stupid, and look what you've done. You've ruined the Christmas do. And I'm like, Andy, penalty, like, there's nothing I can do. He said, I can't believe you've done this. Scores the penalty all the way back off. He said, I can't believe it. I knew you'd do something. I knew that. He says, ruin the whole thing. And I'm like, 5 minutes later, Linfield scored, made it 2-1.
You celebrate then, say?
Oh, I was close. And it's Mark Stafford that scored a diving header, and he went off, he jumped in the crowd, and Chris Morrison was fourth official very early in Chris's career, and Chris is like, Stafford's in the crowd, it'll be a yellow. Well, I was writing the goal down, Mark Stafford already on a yellow. And I was like, I can't hear you there, Chris, sorry, and walked to the front side. He's like, Stafford needs another course. I said, I can't hear you there, Chris. So I took the thing out. I was like, absolutely, in no way am I sending off Mark Stafford when he's just jumped in the crowd to score a winner. And I was nearly in after him, and I was like, no. And it's felt like you say about Waterworth being, and afterwards, I shook his hands after, didn't really say much, and then I went up to the NIFL offices and came back, and I've got 17 missed calls from Andy. He thought that I'd taken it really bad, what he'd done, and thought I'd gone home. He was out to his car, he was going to drive after me to get me back for the Christmas do. I said, I'm just upstairs. But those relationships, like that, were like they were what kept me enjoying it, and what actually made over here. Mm-hmm. I fell in with football over here far more than I probably did in England. Yeah, and it's funny, like you say, I would not watch a lot of football in England now because I find it's that bit soulless, I think. Yeah. But I just love the relationships you build up. Ross Redmond, I used to, with vanishing spray, I always just spray. But anytime I refereed Ross Redmond, I'd always spray the vanishing spray down his boot because he absolutely hated it. He was raging. And he was real crazy, you play with Ross, he gets real annoyed on the field, like, and the more annoyed he'd get, I'd always go for the vanishing spray, like, hated it.
I feel like that's one of the good aspects of referees too. And we spoke before about certain people like Tony Clark in the last couple of years. I really enjoyed working with Tony. Like he had a bit about himself. That's probably the best way to describe things. I always thought you were the same. You could have a conversation with me, you have a bit of crack. You would probably tell me I was fucking useless, and you would just laugh and run on. And same with Krangle. Krangle was very much similar. So I do think that being that sort of character allows referees to become more human in terms of players' eyes, which would then gain you more respect, if that makes sense.
But I think as things change, you'll get fall. I mean, and like people say about our panel, like the last 3 years, we lost Andy Davey, who'd been one of those referees. Yeah. We've lost Raymond, who was one of those referees. I've retired. Tragically lost Keith as well. Mm-hmm. That's a massive amount of experience, but also probably the referees that you're describing there, the newer referees, I've probably been brought up in a different way and coached in a different way. That's it's coming back to UEFA. Like you've played in Europe, like you don't get that in Europe. Like you're trying to have a bit of crack with the referee, they look at you and say, "The hell are you?"
No, don't talk to me. Yeah.
Well, they're not coached to do that, and that was like a big and like you could diffuse. And like there were so many like the difficult players that you'd referee, like you could break them down with like and. As you say, it's all pantomime out there, like, and people would say about like different, like if you say who were the difficult players in the Irish, like Robbie Garrett was one of my favourite players to referee. Like, everyone would say like he's hard, like he'd moan at you, he'd give you dog's abuse, and then he'd laugh afterwards. And I remember once he was chasing me with the field, and he'd give me a dig in the ribs on the way past. I'm like, right. And my fourth official was again a new guy. He's like, number 8, just give you a dig in the ribs. I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. And like. Guys, you love, like I love the character, like Paul Heatley. Yeah, moan for the whole game. See the one that whistle goes. He's the first one over. And it's like, yeah, and I always remember the game. We refereed after Keith had passed away. It was Carrick and somebody. That was one of the toughest games we refereed just because of what had happened. I remember the first 3 minutes I was all over the show because we'd had the minute silence and whatever. And I remember somebody came up and put their arm around me and was like, "We've got you, don't worry." Yeah. It was Paul, the guy that would moan at you for the and it's pantomime, the whole moaning thing, and yeah, like the one I always like when we talk about players with Jim Irvin would chase you around for 90 minutes, spitting venom at you because he just wants to win. Jim's just as a player he couldn't talk to Jim like he would just be the most focused. Any decision it would be at you. See the moment that final whistle, like it'd be at you. It'd be like, Lee, where box up. Final whistle, I'd go, "Bring it today, Lee, really good." I'd be like, every game I was like, "You just chased me around for 93 minutes. I thought you were great today." And then he'd go and grab his lad from the crowd behind. He'd come back over. I thought, like the moment that whistle went, yeah. I mean, he's an absolute gentleman. Jim is like, you couldn't again another really really nice guy, but for 90 odd minutes.
It's just the competitive spirit, isn't it?
It is. Jamie Mulgrew's like Jamie, like would tear you to shreds, but you see him in the street and you sit and talk football for it's and I think that's where referees, when I tried to pass on my experience, I was like, get to know the human, because it will give you that perspective of this is just pantomime. This is a person that wants to win. Mm-hmm. This is not somebody that has anything personal against you. But secondly, they'll get to know you a little bit and go, well, I might leave.
He's all right, yeah.
I might have a go at him, but and I say the relationships, like the last 3 years for me, even though I was doing the better games, were the easiest 3 years refereeing because I could just focus because I knew very well that, yes, people might have a go at me, but it would always be, we'd have a conversation
Yeah.
And that's players and managers and everything that comes with it. Like, I can't think of a player that I've come away from refereeing actually that I think I didn't actually have a decent enough relationship with them in the end. Like, there's nobody I came away and thought they were really hard work. There's nobody.
Yeah.
Me and Shane McCann used to fall out all the time, but we made up in the last 12 months because we didn't really know why we used to fall out with each other. We're just one piece in front. It's like, why do we always fall out with each other? It's like a married couple. I was like, I don't know. I was like, you just really irritate me sometimes. I was like, we should stop doing this, and that was it. Like, and that's the side of the Irish League I think people sort of love.
You've had a lot of good times in the Irish League, as we just talked about there, and you've mentioned some household names, as you would talk about, but there's always bad times too. And you did go through a stage quite recently that was quite tough for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I've spoken about it quite a lot. We've done an article in the paper. And I think the really great thing now is that it's so common for people to speak about it now.
It's fantastic that people speak.
See, 10 years ago, nobody was speaking about it.
Not even close to it.
And it was 2018 I did that article, and it was probably... And I remember I contacted the journalist... I think it was either Dermy O'Carroll or Andy Waterworth, who they'd done the similar thing, and they said, you should give him a shout. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking, and he was just like, and I remember him saying, he's like, you sure you're okay for me to print this? I'm like, yeah, well, I think this is sort of the end of the period. And for people that you sort of don't know, I would have suffered mental health from probably about 16 onwards, but probably didn't even really acknowledge I was suffering from mental health until about 30. So I've been through all of that, and I didn't know what it was. Again,
you just think it's normal. I think that's what gets everyone. You just think that this,
and it was like, this is life. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. It's a tough time, and like as a teenager, and refereeing was always a real positive. Like, it was a real positive. I think football often is for people.
It's your breakaway, isn't it?
It is, and like people always say, "Well, did it affect you on the field?" And I was like, No, that was my time away. I was in control. That was my... But so I suffered anxiety mainly. Different levels. It was around... I was working at the IFA 2015, where it got... And it just builds. And like it's almost like a block on top of each other, where I'm struggling, I get over it, I'm better now. Come back. And I made like 3 or 4 doctor's appointments to speak to a doctor, because I was like, I think... You start to sort of think something's not quite... Maybe everybody doesn't go through this, and I was at that sort of stage. But by the time I got to the doctor's appointment, I'd be like, I'm all right, fine. I go to the doctors, I said, I've got bad ears. The doctor was baffled, like, he was like, why? He thought I had the worst ears, and I know that. He was like, there's nothing wrong with your ears. I was like, definitely is. But I needed something to tell him, so he's got the ears. And then got to May 2015, and I used to get waves of anxiety, and like my main issue was I could make my world fall apart in my head myself in minutes. So I could go from, I had a row with the missus, will do, to, right, we're splitting up, never going to see the kids again, life's over. And and that was where my anxiety would jump in. It would take the smallest little thing and build it to a massive thing. Mm-hmm. It would attach itself to work, attach itself to it, like it was all sort of things. And I would get waves of this that would be once a week. You deal with it. I was at a stage where it was happening once every 10 minutes. And I was just burnt out. I was just... And the first time I thought about suicide was like I had suicidal thoughts throughout my whole life. It just became a bit of a habit, really. But again, would come back. I was having thoughts of suicide every 15 minutes and trying to break them and work away from it. And I was just so exhausted by it that I got home. And we got home one day, I'd said to a partner at the time, it's the first time I'd ever said, I'm really struggling here. And she was just like, what's wrong with you? Like, because I'd never spoken about it to anybody. I'd not spoken about it at work, friends, family, nobody. All in my own head. And I just said, listen, but it's too late by that point, because they're just like, we'll talk about it when I get home, like, cause,
yeah.
And I just drank 2 bottles of wine, took a load of pills, was like, you can't do this anymore. And it was all pure panic on that occasion, where I was like, and luckily I'd messaged my friend, and I think any time where I was suffering, and this is where like a big message to people: if you're worried about somebody, I was trying to tell people, but I couldn't tell them. So it would be in real hints, and one of my mates in England had gone, that's a really weird message he'd sent me, like, and I then rang my partner who had gone, yeah, he'd been a bit weird, actually, I'll get somebody to call around. Somebody called around, no answer. Police came around, put the door in. Luckily, got me off to hospital in time. And to this day, like, I look back on that with such shame, even though I shouldn't. I look back on it because, like, my life was great at that point. But in my head, I was suffering so much. I hadn't spoken about it. I was just... And it wasn't that I wanted to die that time. It was I just didn't know how to carry on. I just did not know how at all. And that was the start of the process of recovery, really. But like people always say, that talking is the biggest thing, and I agree. See, talking about the first time is horrific.
Yeah.
See the shame and the guilt and everything that comes with it. And I was like... I just thought, I can't get any lower than this. I really did. Like, afterwards, the 2 weeks after were the worst period when you're trying to just work through what has happened and what you've done. But that was the point where I did start speaking about it. And again, like, some of the people who spoke, like the people I worked with at IFA at that time, the referees, were so... Because I couldn't talk to my family.
Okay.
Because there's too much shame. I couldn't talk to my close friends because their first reaction was, why don't you tell us?
Yeah.
I was like, partly I didn't know and partly I just couldn't. So actually it was work colleagues and people within football that were the ones I could probably open up to more because they're slightly more detached from it. And I said within 6 months I was sort of doing talks and talking through and I sort of talking about the importance of football. Like, I remember halfway through I started taking the tablets. I was like, I've got a match on Saturday. In the middle of all of this, in the middle of the worst, I was like, I've got a match on Saturday. I need to, and I'd stopped to do an email to say I can't do the match on Saturday, and sent the and I don't know if that had an effect, but like that was probably the first time I was like, I'm not gonna be here on Saturday, and I don't know if that had any, but like having that football like was so important. And that was the first time it sort of, but that was the start of the recovery, I think, and. I think probably 4 years after that was a struggle. Like I'm still on medication now. I take antidepressants. I've tried to stop, just aren't quite there that I can yet. I went through CBT, I went through counts. I still have counselling from time to time now to sort of keep. And again, these are all stigma things that 10 years ago people were like, you don't need to do that. Like I wouldn't. When somebody suggested you going on to tablets straight away, I'm like, I don't need. But like, if you're diabetic and somebody says you need to take your insulin, you're not going to be, I don't need that.
No, you take it.
It's that stigma. A few years later, sort of after COVID, and like people say, like, "Are you cured?" I'll never be cured. I'll always have anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, that sort of goes into depression. I try not to get that, but like it's not something I'll ever get rid of. It's something I just try and live with. After COVID, I think it was tough for everybody. I hit a really, really low spot. And had a second suicide attempt, which was 100% completely different, planned out. I'd written notes. I just one day thought, like, I'd again been really, really struggling. I'd suicidal thoughts on a regular basis, and I just thought, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. And the feeling when I've made that decision was incredible. Like it was like somebody had just switched to switch off and just, it's okay now. And I just felt so relieved that I'd made the decision that I was going to do. I can't describe to you, like, I'd planned, I knew where I was going to go, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to throw myself over a bridge, wait for a lorry to come past. My only issue was what the impact on that person was going to be. That was my only issue in the whole thing. There was no thinking about what other people would have thought. And I was totally 100%, I'm going to do it because, and I'd so many, and this is what really frustrates me in a way looking back, I had so many people who were fighting my corner that knew I was struggling, that said, let reach out. It wouldn't matter. In my head, it was like, I'm being a burden. This has been happening for years now. I just need to put an end to this. And I spent a day and a half just probably it was almost like euphoria that I just felt so relieved. And I went with Jamie Robinson. I went for a walk with him, and remember just thinking, I really, really want him to ask me if I'm okay. But he never would. He was probably thinking, why is this guy in such a good mood?
Yeah.
And I was just hoping somebody would get like...
Do you think that would have helped?
At that point, yeah. And I think that's why it's so... And like we've had so many tragedies, Irish League, and my big thing that I will never... And it's frustrating when we lose other people to suicide, because it's like, not another one. And it will still hurt, like it's... But we need to look out. We need to be asking each other. And I really irritate my friends at times when I look and go, there's something not right with him. That's why, because I look back to that point where I think if anybody would have gone, oh, you're all right. And there's no reason. I was covering it up so well. If somebody had gone, Lee, something's not right with you. My first answer would have been, I'm fine.
Yeah. I
think if they come back and go, no, you're not. I think in that last 6 months period, I'd go, no, I'm not. I need help. And we've got to do that. Men were rubbish. We are rubbish. And there's a reason that the 75% of suicides are male, because we're rubbish at it. We think we shouldn't do it. And even sitting here now talking about, I'm so ashamed still that even though it's an illness, I get that. Like, I've got 2 brilliant kids, 3 kids now. But I had 2 kids. I've got 3 brilliant kids. I've got a great job, no money worries. Like, my life's great.
Yeah.
But still, I was happy to sit on it. And I sat on that bridge. The only thing that sort of clicked me out was my oldest daughter rang me. Because about 10 people had rang the police because I put a photo on social media, which again was, people say it's a cry. It was a cry for help. I was just hoping somebody would come and say, are you all right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have worked, but I wanted something to end. And if you're going to, like, it's not a natural human emotion to want to kill yourself, but I had 3 notes written. 2 for my kids, 1 for my ex-partner at the time. And I was so ready. I was so ready to do it.
Do you ever think that, like, the phone call?
With from
the daughter?
It clicked me back in because it kicked the guilt out, like that. Someone's going to ring her and tell her.
Yeah.
But I'd thought about that a million times. Like, to try and stop myself, try and click myself out of it, I was like, your kids are going to be devastated. And I'm like, and I'd click out, I was like, this is ridiculous. Within 10 minutes, I went back to where I was. And I say, I'm so ashamed looking back at it, but the one thing I said, and after that, and as I say, the police eventually got me, took me back. A couple of friends came and sat with me for the night. I swore to myself then that I have to properly sort it, because I was much better than I was, but I had to get something in place that can never happen again. And thankfully, that's never got anywhere close. Have I had suicide? Yeah, I have, and I still do. I probably have had them in the last 6 weeks, but I have such a self-defense mechanism to deal with it when it happens. I go, no. And it made me really, really determined from that point onwards. And the other thing I said was, if I can stop this happening to anybody else, I'll do it. Because, like, I did some work in the work in the prisons that we did with the IFA. Like, we used to sit with the prisons and chat about mental health for hours, because every kid in there has their own story.
Yeah.
And I actually ran into one about 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "You're the lad from the IFA that did the talk on mental health." I said, "Yeah." He says, "See, when I got out," he says, "I went on medication. I decided I was going to do it." See, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what helps me. And I'm like, right, okay. And we've had 3 or 4 tragedies in the last 12 months in the Irish League. Mm-hmm. This country is a difficult place for mental health for various reasons. And as sad as that is, I just think us talking about it, and the work you and Davey are doing is amazing. The work that clubs are doing is amazing. We will never know how many people were at a point where they were like, but actually thought, well, do you know what? It's
on the verge. Yeah.
See, when I did the article in 2018, I still got them out, because I still occasionally, when I'm struggling, read it. I got over 120 messages from people involved in local sport, football, saying, superb, I know what you're talking about. I've had similar things. 120. It's there in everybody. Like,
well, it's not that we're trying to say that we're doing things right, but the amount of people who open up like yourself in the podcast, the sheer amount of messages that flood in about people in positions is wild.
It's scary, and
And it takes a lot to send the message, don't get me wrong, and you want to see, and the reason why people are obviously coming out is because they're listening to people like yourself talk about problems that they're obviously suffering, and maybe they just haven't felt like they're comfortable enough.
I struggle to think back to when I couldn't talk about it. And it's not a regret, but like I probably went 12, 13 years in my own head trying to work out what was going on. And I as I say, part of you thinks it's normal, part of you doesn't know what to do, part of you doesn't want to speak about it. The first time I spoke about it to a doctor, it was horrendous.
Yeah.
The doctor looked more uncomfortable than I did. He was about 12. And I just was, and I'm trying to get work. And like, God, no, I couldn't tell you what I said, but it was the first attempt and a very bad attempt. But actually, I found it, so my first ever talk that I did was in a pub in Dundonald to a load of Glentoran fans.
Okay.
A friend of mine had asked and said, like, they'd run a bit of a men's group and, like, would you come and do it? Didn't know any of these guys. I found it easier stood on a stage talking about it than sat. That was it's the first time I've probably done it I've done it a lot to a group. Mm-hmm. It's harder for me to sit sort of one-to-one, and we've spoken about it.
We've had the
many times, like, so it's not the first time I've spoken to you about it, but like,
I'm here for you.
Trying to, and like, and people say, what do you, like, I don't want sympathy, like, in fact, I hate people being sympathetic after it, like, what I want is for other people to go, that resonates.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we said, like, there's far more people talking about it, and it's great, the stigma's broken, but the stigma's still there.
Still there for a lot of people, but as I say, like, you can definitely see major improvements in terms of what people are willing to come out and say.
After I did the article, there was a club wrote to their FA to say they didn't want me refereeing the games.
Right.
Because they said, we've read the article and he shouldn't be refereeing games if he's got mental health problems. And I don't know which club.
Talk about being backwards, eh?
But that actually spurred me on so much. Nobody told me for about 2 years, and I'm glad they didn't tell me. But eventually someone said, listen, we got this letter, and we obviously wrote back in strong terms to say, don't know what club. I don't want to know what club because I could never have gone and refereed them again. Yeah. If I'd have known. But that really, I was like, that's the issues we're up against. That people go, I mean, can you imagine somebody going in there and saying, oh, I've got a really bad back? And then somebody writing, oh, we don't want that referee. He's got a bad back. Like, that really spurred me on to go, there's so much work left to be done, where the perception is that, you look on a field, probably you've got 22 players and 3 referees, you've probably got half of them that have some sort of mental health, struggle that's going on. And football, ironically, I mean, 20 years ago was probably the worst place you could ever talk about mental health because of that image and the man up and the... Yeah. Now I think it's... And GAA, this, I went and spoke at a GAA conference. I wandered in, an English guy in an IFA tracksuit, and everyone was like, I think you're in the wrong place, mate. I don't think you're supposed to be here. I was like, right, okay. But 500 coaches and I was in for a 20-minute slot. An hour later, I was still talking, and the passion that was coming out of their coaches, partly for themselves, but they were like, every week we're fighting to save one of our own players. Because, I mean, they've had equally as many tragedies, and, like, the amount of messages I had from coaches afterwards to say, it's brilliant, how do we develop that? And, like, a bit of work with clubs, like, and sport all of a sudden, bizarrely, has become this place that has gone from the least likely place now, I actually think, to the most likely place, because it's had so many of its own tragedies that people are like, we're fed up with this. And we really want to look after each other, and long may that continue on.
You talked there just at the start about the strategies that you use to cope with things at the minute. How difficult has it been for you to understand those strategies work for you? And how long? Because obviously this isn't an overnight fix. This has been going on and continues to still go on and affect you, but it's good for people to understand that it's not something that will be cured overnight. This is something that you'll have to work out. And
I think that's the one thing that I've probably taught myself, is exactly what you say there. Like, I try and, like, when I'm speaking to people about mental health, I'm like, this isn't going to go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
That it would be absolutely remiss of me to say everything's fine now, and like even that line, everything will be okay. It might be, but it's going to be damn hard because. And my coping strategy, it's just really been almost just a suck it and see approach to see what works. I mean, like, went onto medication and I think now it's hopefully different. But when I took the medication, nobody told me that there was going to be horrendous side effects that came with it. Okay. And the first medication I ever took, one of the side effects was that you get suicidal thoughts. Okay. I was like, and no one told me that. It's only when them leaflets that you never read. Actually, I was like, gee, because like. It made
Last thing you need.
Well, it wasn't ideal. Like, I mean, like, take an aspirin, it'll probably give you a headache. All right, okay. So it got 10 times worse, and again, adapted the dose, changed the medication, got something that worked for me. I did some CBT, which is like, again, developing coping strategies. Some of it, like, they do like breathing and stuff like that. That's not for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. Works for some people, really, really good for some people. I sat there and go, for that, I was like, this ain't for me. Yeah. Whereas other bits were, like keeping a diary was really good for me, and to look back and see what the triggers were, so what was triggering it. And then I sort of got my own counsellor, and she was absolutely brilliant in terms of sort of like recognising that my emotions would come before the thought, so I was totally driven by the emotions, so I was being driven by the anxiety, but the thought would come afterwards, and actually sort of changing that to actually have the thought rational, then the emotions afterwards. But the biggest thing was having a support network around me and having people that I knew, and really, really working hard to convince myself that I used to save people on my phone as mental health contact, which is weird. But what that did was remind me that like that person has said at any time, if you're struggling, get in touch.
Yeah.
And I had 3 or 4 at one stage. So a couple of people we've spoken about today on this. Couple of people at home back in England who I would regularly just ring and go,
I'm struggling.
Yeah. I'm struggling. Don't know what you need to do, but just having this conversation, starting this conversation makes me feel better already. And that's what it would be. And when things were bad, it really was just about surviving day to day, hour to hour sometimes.
Yeah.
Once I got to a stage where I was sort of in good mental health, felt good, it was then about just developing all those strategies to say, right, I have to have an armory of like, so this doesn't, and if it does happen again, I have 5 or 6 options of what I can go to.
Yeah.
And 2021 was the last really bad time. Since then, I've got nowhere near, which
good.
But that has just again been down to having a fairly. But to say, you feel guilty in a way that. There are, there's millions of people in much worse situations than me.
Yeah.
With so many hardships, whether it be financial, social, who are battling through it. And there's me with comfortable living, good family. And that actually then builds on the guilt that you already have. So you're then feeling guilty about the way that you're feeling. And it really is so complex. But as I say, the one thing I'd say, just speak to, and it doesn't matter who you speak to. Find the person you're comfortable, because I was like, well, I should talk to my family, the worst possible people to speak to, because they're going to be feeling terrible.
Yeah.
I sat and talked with a couple of lads from work, and I remember sitting in Costa on Boucher Road, and they were like, everything, because they'd obviously heard that I'd taken a few weeks off work and something had been bad, and I just went through and said, this is what's happened, and in my head, they're all going to just go, that's absolutely ridiculous, judge me, walk out. I mean, not complete opposite is what happened, to where they were like, what can we do to help? And that's the start of the process. But it's hard, it's horrible, but it has to be that start of the process.
Yeah, I think that's it's gonna touch a lot of people's strings, is probably the best way to say it, because it is quite raw, it's quite.
I think when we apply it to guys that we know that we've lost in even the last 12 months, and the first thing will always be, I know quite a few people who've taken their own life, a couple of people from school, and
does that help? And by help, I mean, does that help you now in the situation where you see what's left? So in terms of family, in terms of what it does to people after, that that person has decided to take this decision and do what they've done, does that kind of help with the process of being, I'm in a good place now and I know that I can't get back there because this will lead to this for this?
I think it brings things into perspective. I mean, like, I've been to a couple of funerals in the last 12 months of people, and like,
just devastation, isn't it?
What do you say?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know the answer to that still, and like, I've spoken to the parents of, and I'm like, and it's funny, one of them knew that I'd spoken about it and was almost speaking to me as if to say, what could we have done? I mean, that ripped me. I'm like,
yeah.
And I think, and I think the only thing, like, look at so many going back, the majority of the time we'll never know, but I suspect the answer is, what could we have done? Nothing. If people want to hide it, and if people want to, and I've been there myself, I don't think there's anything in those last 2 days, once I'd made a decision, that anyone could have said to me to change your mind, with the exception of probably my very close family. I don't think if somebody had gone, listen, everything's going to be all right, I think I'd have just been like, no, I've got 16 years worth of experience telling me it's not going to be all right. I'm settled. So I think the answer is probably, but on the flip side of that, I think it just makes everybody, like, I've had so many conversations where people are just really determined now to stop this happening, and I think we all know we're not. There's going to be there's going to be things that just
highs and lows and ups and downs, and
there's going to be people that hide it so well that no one could have known, for the reasons, the stigma that we've spoken about. But I think there's a lot of people in now who are just determined to minimize it as much as possible, whereas 10 years ago we just wouldn't have spoken about it. We'd just been, it's things that happen to other people. And I think now, I don't think you speak to many people that haven't been touched by it in one way or another, whether it's a friend or a family, and I think now people are just like, we've got to pull our heads out of our asses and do everything we possibly can to stop that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that this conversation that I have heard before still gets to me every time. Most conversations get to me, I'm just a big crybaby at times, but it doesn't bother me, you know.
But you know what, that like, I've cried more times in the last 5 years than I did in the first 38, because it's like, sometimes you get to that point.
Yeah, I get you.
It's okay.
I always thought I was a horrible person until about 28. In terms of football, I was like, I don't give one care about anybody or anything, or problems that go on with people's families, or you'd see stuff on TV, I'd be like, that doesn't affect me one. If I watch an advert on TV and it's about like a kid, I'm like, it got me there, and I'm like how am I, like, what's going on? Lucy's laughing at me, like, you crying? I'm like,
it's when you open those floodgates. Like, I mean, I think I was so, I wanted to control my emotions so much because I was hiding so much as well that like nothing would sort of creep. Now, like, watching the John Lewis advert and blossom dice out, I'm like, Jesus, I'm like, what's happened to me?
I know.
But do you know what? I'm much happier being that person.
100%, I agree.
That's letting the emotions out than the shut away and the
trying to be the man that
it is. It's
like,
that
and you're like,
really
who
is.
cares?
And like,
anybody who's single, chicks love men that cry. Remember that? Birds love it.
I'm well put. I wish I'd known that when I was 18.
See him.
Too late.
Well, one of the good things is I always finish on a positive, right? Yours technically probably isn't as positive, but we'll try and lighten the mood a wee bit, right? So what I want to talk to you about is you've had some refereeing decisions that have went for you, and obviously some refereeing decisions that have went against you. I want to talk to you about some of the good refereeing decisions that's went for you. Can you recall good times? Because I want to end on the bad times, because that'll be... I've one in mind.
Oh, no.
Very recent. As a Ballymena fan.
Ah.
That I want to get to.
Right. Good decision. No one cares about referees' good decisions.
No, they all care about the bad ones.
You know when you used to
They're setting you up here. I know you
used to get DVDs. You'd get like, no, there was never a DVD of Mark Clattenburg's 25 greatest decisions. Like,
I'm just setting you up. It's all about the bad one.
Listen, so I mean, like, and that's the thing about a referee. And for any sort of young referees, we try and get this over. Nobody will remember 99% of your career. 99.9% of your career. They'll remember you for the howlers.
Yeah.
And I think a referee's career is often defined by cutting out those really, like, I remember, like, I did a quarter final, and Joe Gormley a guy again. He's another guy. If somebody says I don't like Joe Gorman, it's like, nah, you've got the problem.
Everyone loves Joe.
Everyone loves Joe. He won't mind me saying this. When we're doing the courses in the prison, Andy Waterworth used to come in and play the tournament at the end and do like the talk. But this one course, they were all Cliftonville fans, and they were like, we don't want Waterworth, we want Joe Gormley, we want Joe the goal in. And I was reffing Cliftonville that weekend. I said, well, I'll ask him. I said to Joe, I said, listen, this is what we're doing. And he was like, yeah, no, well.
Yeah.
It was like, he was walking and like, you could hear from the balconies as he's walking. He said, oh, Joe, oh, yeah.
Really cool.
It was like, he's like,
Joe's like a god up in North Belfast.
It's like I'm walking down the high street here.
There's a thing that they won the Irish Cup in the schools. Did you ever see the video of the schools?
I did, aye.
I've never seen anything like it.
It's unbelievable. It's like Maradona walking through like Buenos Aires.
And in fairness, he deserves that because of what he's done,
He really
but
does.
it really is, man.
See the looks on these boys' faces when he were like, we were only joking.
Yeah.
I was like, well, here he is.
You're a legend for that too.
My credibility went.
I've sorted this.
And Joe played in the tournament and everything, like
did.
banging goals in left, right, and centre in this tournament. But anyway, Joe scored with the handball, if you remember it. Mm-hmm. Now he had no idea. Nobody had any idea. I can cope with that. Like I got off and I was annoyed like that. There was no way I was ever going to see that. That's not the how. Like they're things you're going to miss. It's the really, really, like the goal line decision we were talking about before, the one at Windsor where the ball doesn't cross the line. You just want to avoid those.
Yeah.
So like there's plenty of ones and that's the thing. Like I can remember all the bad decisions. I can't remember many of the good ones because like you're always focusing on that. But,
no, I know. That's why I set you up. I don't really want to know about the good ones. It's all about the bad ones.
I'll send you some clips later.
One of the most recent ones, right? You obviously have a few in your head, maybe that you would know, but one of the biggest talking points last year, or the year before maybe, was Josh Carson, the tackle.
Were you playing in that game?
Define playing.
You were there though.
I was in the dugout.
Right. Okay. Well, that's why I'd always expect.
This is probably the stage where I was quite injured. Heavily injured. But yes, Josh Carson's one was like the first game of season. It was against Linfield.
It was 20 minutes.
Jim left me out. Yeah. But let's not talk about that too much, right? It's got nothing to do with Jim and leaving me out, where he probably should play me. But this is just obviously it works. Do you know what I mean, Jim? Wise up. But yes, that was a huge talking point after the game. It was this fiasco. But what's that like?
So I mean, first game of the season, 20 minutes in, and the tackle goes at like Josh. That's not the first tackle I've seen Josh put in like that. Mm-hmm. And we never, like, as referees, we try not to prejudge, but you always, like, when you see who it is, and my gut reaction was like, that's not great. I knew at the time it wasn't great. Yeah. You know by player reaction. Like, some of my best decisions I've made on player reaction. Yeah. I tell you, like, you have half an idea what's going on, but you pick up the clues that's going on. And even, like, the reaction of your Chris Shields, who doesn't really ever react. Yeah. And he was, and I'm like, but I didn't have a good view of it at all. I'm looking from behind. I can't see his feet. Yeah. So I know he's lunged in, but I don't know how. Assistant on this side, really inexperienced. Wasn't really expecting a lot just because one of his first Premier League games. Yeah. And I went over and I thought, right, I'll go and check. It was Ethan McGee who put the tackle in. I'll go and check here. No, he was getting up. Yeah. He was all right. I'm like, I can't gamble on this. 18 minutes into the season. And it would have been a gamble. It would have been a complete guess. Shows the yellow card. And to be fair, at the time, wasn't a great, like, coming off at half time, nobody, like David sort of said that didn't look great. I was like, no, it didn't, but I explained, he's well, fair enough. That was it. Yeah. Then after the game, there's a picture, my mate Desi Lockery. And I say, we were talking about before, Desi, to be fair.
Desi wasn't a footballer, Desi was a photographer.
Listen, did he play? He might have refereed, actually. But Desi's got me out of a couple of holes with good pictures he's got. I remember I was up at the Milk Cup and I sent a player off from CSK in Moscow and these Russians were ready to kill me. Okay. And Desi had got the photo of the tackle.
And a bunch of people want to kill you.
Not great, like. And I was like, I'm going to get killed in Libavadi by Russians. But Desi actually showed him the picture and they were like, all right, okay, and all sat down and stopped. I was like, thanks, Desi. So he owed me, and I saw the picture. As soon as I see the picture, red card. Yeah. You can see the connection. Everything that I missed on the day was in that picture. But again, I know David Healy knocked on, showed me that. I said, I've seen it, David. Red card. Right, okay. I was like, listen, explain what I just said to you. No problem. And then I'm not big for social media at all. for various reasons. I mean, if you type my name to social media, there's some very amusing things that get said on there. Okay. There's a few videos with like Looney Tunes over the top and things like that. My mates,
show you trying to run, isn't it?
That's it. My mates send them to me. Though. They find them and send them to me. I'm like, so I can't avoid it. 10 years ago, I'd have probably been a bit upset. The last 5 years of me, I quite enjoyed it, to be honest.
Good.
But I got a few tweets saying like, how did you make blah blah. And again, I knew at that point this is probably my last season. And I thought, you know what? I've always been coming back to what we spoke about at the start, letting people into refereeing a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I know it's a red card. Spoken to the assessor. I'd said to the assessor, listen, because we said afterwards, we look at it after. I was like, I've seen the clip. I've seen this picture. Leslie Irvine was assessing. Leslie's like, 100%. Thanks for your honesty. No point being anything else. So I tweeted back to a couple of little Linfield fans that would often like. Supporters, because I reply back, supporters always used to send me stuff like, what's this, what's that? Padraig Marshall used to message me once a day. I used to get, sometimes his reports on me were better than the assessors. They were quite good. I was like, something. So I messaged back, I said, listen, this is, and again, said exactly what I said. Poor angle. Looking back at it, definitely a red card. And it killed it. And like, actually, the majority of people came back and was like, fair play.
Yeah.
Killed the conversation. Fine. Didn't expect it to get picked up particularly, but then the next day it was Belfast Live, referee admits. I'm like, I'm okay with that. No problem at all. Couple other people then, like, and the reaction was 99% positive from clubs. Next time I went back to Linfield were like, brilliant, that's all we want. Like, our supporters could just go, and I'd had the private conversation with David already. It's
just honesty and accountability.
It's absolutely fine. The 1% of people that hated it with AFA, they hated it. Hated me doing it.
Okay.
I think they never actually officially spoke to me, but the fact that I then got dropped for 7 games, which suggests they didn't really like it very much. That wasn't a great sign.
Kind of lets you know, doesn't it?
There was an inkling that I'd possibly done something wrong, and I didn't think I'd been that bad in that game. That probably. So
7 weeks,
7-game ban. You get that for having a go at a ref.
You get that for headbutting someone.
But so and I spoke to a couple of people within, not who run refereeing, and they were really uncomfortable with it. And I never really got to the point of why. And then I got a phone call, I think, on the Tuesday after, because this had all died down. I'm like, well. I was from another journalist, and he was like, do you want to do a story? I was like, well, I've nothing else to say outside if I got it wrong, so not really. And he was like, well, the fact you reported Josh for the tackle. I'm like, what? So he's got a 3-game ban. I was like, I've no idea what you're talking about. And this was the first I heard that the IFA, the referees department, had referred it to the disciplinary, and disciplinary gave him a 3-game ban.
Yeah.
Completely and utterly reversing the positive effects of me speaking about it. Ridiculous. And then that rumbled on into like a 7-month.
Yeah, because it was tribunals and all, wasn't it?
Tribunals, and like the lowest point of the lot was, I think, Jamie Bryson was representing Bellamy.
He was.
And I got the assemblies, and I never actually even turned. Well, it was cancelled, but as it often happens, it was cancelled about 8 times because this and that were happening. And the time they organised it, I couldn't go. I said, I'll do it via Zoom if you want me to. And they were like, fine. I said, I'm available, I'm working, but I'll take my break between 6:30 and 7:30. 8:15, they rang me, you're ready now? I was like, no, I'm back at work. So I never even turned up at the, I didn't speak at the tribunal. To be fair, I had nothing to say out, so I cautioned him on the day. I'm happy enough with that. Yeah, it was a red card, but these things happen. But I read that they sent this report that Ballymena had put in, and I think Jamie had written it, and Jamie's summation was the referee inadvisedly took to social media on a Saturday night, maybe after a few drinks, to say, and I'm like, is Jamie Bryson slagging off my social media use? Because if he is, this is the lowest point. I was like, oh no, Jamie's saying I've
There's
taken
not many people get more abuse than that fella.
That's what I mean. I was like, so thanks, Jamie, for, hopefully I made it easy on you for a week, on Twitter, because, but I just think that could have been such a positive.
It was, yeah.
And say, any game that I went to was 4th official for the next 12 weeks because I wasn't refereeing. Everyone was saying, it's great, we want to see more. And apart of this, some people say, well, referees are now expected. I don't think it doesn't make referees. It's a personal choice whether the referee decides to admit they're wrong or not.
100%.
The more experienced ones will do it more often. why on earth they went through that whole for three. As referees, and I think I can speak for 99% of my colleagues, see, once we've refereed in the day, we couldn't care less if a player gets a ban. I remember Sean Ward, nicest man in football, apart from his jumper. I sent him off at Crusaders Glentoran. Second yellow. First yellow was soft, really soft. Second one, and you'd killed Robin McDade, so that was fine. But Crusaders had realised, I think the way the code was written, they could appeal on the first one, which was done away with after this once they'd realised. And they appealed it, and it's fine, I'll turn up at the appeal. And there was another one for Glentoran on the same night, and the four officials, Keith was a referee actually, the four officials were there in the suits, all dressed up. Glentoran come in, barrister, like there was about 20 people in reception. Me and Sean's was up first. It was me in my jeans and my t-shirt, Wardy in his jeans, and Bernard Thompson just scurrying in the background. And we were like, "What? There's a huge court case going on here." And Wardy walks in. I was like, "Do you want a brew?" And made a brew in the office and walks in. And he's like, "What's this about?" I was like, "Apparently they don't like your first course." And I said, "But it was really soft." I said, "I'm just going to tell them it was really soft. It was wrong."
Yeah.
I said, "That'll kill it." Walks in. I said, "Yeah." They said, "What do you think?" Looking back, I said, "Yeah, I got it completely wrong." Oh. I said, "Sean's a lovely lad. Don't want to see him banned." Just striked off. Oh. Right. I said, "Yeah, completely wrong." Done. 3 minutes. I don't care if he gets banned.
Yeah.
Referees don't care. Like I'm telling you, not one referee cares. We do a job on the day. What happens afterwards is completely irrespective.
Yeah.
And those disciplinaries are horrible. See, when it's a real nasty one, I've sat in a couple. They're horrible, and they do a lot of damage to football. And I just think discipline got that so wrong. Like it should have just been. It was missed on the day. It comes back to VAR. Well, if the line had given an offside that turned out, are we going to go back? No, we're not going to change the result. What happens on the day should be what happens on the day. If something's completely missed, a punch or something, fair enough, that's different.
Yeah.
But this was a tackle, and it went from a real positive to a long drawn out.
Well, in terms of, just before we finish, in terms of what they have went and done on behalf of you, pretty much, because the only person who comes out in bad light is you in that situation, because you've made the decision to give the yellow. You've came out and said what you've said. They've then taken this further on your behalf, near enough, without.
But they never spoke about it. Still to this, I don't know who it was that decided to refer it. No one ever spoke to me about it.
Does that not leave a huge sort of black sort of mark?
I think it made my decision to finish. I think I probably would have gone to the end of the season if that hadn't happened. But when that happened, I was just like,
yeah.
And this comes back to the point, like the communication within refereeing between. And I hate this, like, see this typical IFA, I hate it. We're all in together. I hate people just going to the lowest common denominator and say, "Oh, the IFA." IFA could get loads of things better, but we could all do much, much better. I think to capture everything we spoke about, refereeing, the communication needs to be better. We just need to go, we're all in this.
Yeah.
Clubs, referees, officials, everything. Like, the communication just is. And that was so needless.
Yeah.
No one benefited from that whole thing. What could have been that should have been finished Saturday evening on Twitter when I'm having a few beers. And that should have been it. And it was drawn out. And there's been a few cases where, like, no one wins.
Yeah, it's pointless.
I hear the phrase Irish League fan, and I've scoffed at the phrase Irish League family a few times because, like, see when, like, I actually think there is an Irish League family, and I think it's a really dysfunctional one.
Okay.
And sometimes I'm like, listen, like, I've seen situations where people turn on each other really quickly, but I've also seen the reaction to us when Keith passed away.
Yeah. Which
was unbelievable. Positive.
Galvanized.
Everybody.
Yeah, brings people together.
When Michael passed away, the reaction to that. Unbelievable. So there's a real family spirit in there, and we can get behind each other.
The only thing is you can't really rely on that being the reason why people come together.
It shouldn't be, as you say, and grief and tragedy brings people together. What I'd love to see in football in general, but refereeing, is everybody coming together and go at all times and saying, and refereeing should be like, where a lot of people don't like us, culture-wise.
Yeah.
Not us. Nobody dislikes me, and I try and get this over to referees. No one dislikes Jamie Robinson or Ben McMaster or Ian McNabb or Lee Tavinder. They dislike referees.
Yeah.
It's culture. So we should be galvanised together, and we're really not. We're really fragmented as a group at times, and there's some brilliant people in refereeing from the past, from the current, future guys. We've got a really good 5 or 6 on the championship at the moment who are young lads. They're the ones I'm looking at and going, if we don't come together,
they could be.
We'll be having these conversations in 10 years' time where referees are still rubbish because we haven't changed anything. And I just wish we could all come together and just thrash it out and say, right, this is how we make the refereeing better. And don't get me wrong, somebody will make an absolute howler and everyone will go, Irish League referees are the worst in the world. That will happen, 100%. But if that's happening every 3 months, then we can go, well, do you know what? We know that actually we're talking to the managers, we're talking to the league, we're talking to and they're saying, actually, the referees are doing all right at the moment. Mm-hmm. That's what we want. We're never going to be celebrated. But if we're tolerated and we can see genuine rays of positivity, then that's where we need to get to. Like
100%. Well, listen, thank you. I feel like there's probably no better way to end it than end it on a complete positive. But it's been an absolute story. It's
loved it. Really
incredible. And as I say, thank you so much for coming on, Sharon. As I say, I've heard this story before, and I just couldn't wait to get you back on the voice it. Plus, your knowledge around refereeing is very good. So
it's not what you used to say, but yeah, I'll take it.
We'll be finished on hugs.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, thank you so much. I'm not making you run away studio just black armored anymore. See you right.
Join us next week on the On the Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. I'm sick of letting you know who it is or putting out there who it may be. Just tune in next week for another unbelievable guest. See you soon.